Hello, everyone, and welcome to Liverpool. My name is Rabbi Fagleman. I will be sharing a Kabbalat Shabbat with you tonight. Firstly, wish you all Shabbat Shalom. Secondly, want to wish you Chodesh Tov, a good Chodesh, as today is the first of the month of Av, a month that is traditionally a sad month, certainly the beginning of it, when we mourn the two temples that were both destroyed on the 9th of Av, which will be observed a week on Sunday. But we always hope and pray that this should be the last year that we have to undertake and commemorate these sad occasions. This week we're going to read a very long double Sedra, the Sedras of Matot-Masei, and we read that the Jewish people were now at the plains of Moab. This was the final point, the final stop before they were going to invade the land of Canaan and take that which was rightfully theirs. And the tribes of Gad and Reuven, half of Manasseh, were blessed with great livestock. And we know that having money, too much money perhaps, isn't always a good thing. And they decided they preferred to stay in the lush pasture lands of the Transjordan rather than take their inheritance in Eretz Israel proper, in the land of Israel. They were sadly blinded by their material wealth. And they asked Moses for permission to take their share in the Eber HaYarden in the Transjordan. And at first, Moshe Rabbeinu berated them. He said, "What, you're going to let your brothers go and fight whilst you just settle here and stay here and have it easy?" He said, this is what happened 40 years ago. We were about to go into the land, and then people started with their shenanigans. They wanted to send spies, and it all went terribly wrong. So they said to Moshe Rabbeinu, "No, don't worry, we'll make a deal." They said, "We'll build pens for our sheep. Gidros son, Nivne lemiknenu po, we'll build for our sheep. V'arnu tapeinu, and towns for our children. V'anachnu dechaletz chushim, we'll go forward, we will go the head of the army, and we'll fight until we conquer the land which is rightfully ours. And only then will we return back home." And Moshe Rabbeinu saw they were genuine and they weren't going to try and turn the people away from the land. And he said, "Okay, build towns for your children and pens for your sheep, and make sure you keep your word." We have to notice immediately that Moshe Rabbeinu switches the order of their priorities. They said to Moses, we'll build sheep pens for our livestock and towns for our children. The most important thing in their minds was the money, was their possessions. And only then did they think about their children. And Moshe replied, "No, you have it completely wrong. First of all, build towns for your children. Attend to their needs. Afterwards, also, of course, you have to worry about your livelihood. You have to have pens for your sheep." And the Midrash sums up this exchange with a verse in Kohelet, in Ecclesiastes, where it says, "The heart of the wise man is on his right, and the heart of the fool is on his left." Moshe Rabbeinu's heart was on the right. He had his priorities in order. Their hearts were on their left. They were giving precedence to secondary considerations. They were more worried about their money than their children. And we can look at this incident and say to ourselves, what fools! How warped can their values be? How can anyone put the value of their cattle before the welfare of the children? But of course, this is not an isolated incident. It's not something bizarre that happened thousands of years ago. It's an everyday phenomenon. We become so obsessed with our livelihood, with building a business, with advancing professionally, building a practice, that our children can sadly get lost somewhere in the middle. People don't realize that sometimes they're making exactly the same mistake as the tribes of Gad and Reuven. Rashi tells us later on that these tribes of these soldiers who went from Gad and Reuven, they didn't return home for over 14 years until they'd had 7 years of conquest, 7 years of splitting up the land. They remained in Israel for these 14 years. And he says the children if they were 3 or 4, 5 years old when they left, now when their fathers came home, they were teenagers or young adults. And he says, the Medrash tells us, the fathers were shocked to find their sons had long hair. They looked indistinguishable from their pagan neighbors. And that's what happens when parents give priority to their wealth over their children. The Ksav Sofer, he raises an interesting question. What's Moshe Rabbeinu saying at the end? Vayotze mipichem ta'asu, do as you say. Isn't that obvious? Why did he have to impress upon them that they had to keep their word? And he explains he knew who he was dealing with. Once he saw that their money was the most important thing to them, he didn't trust them so much. He said, we'll let you do this, but it's cast iron. There's no going back. You have to do exactly as you've said. Reb Tzadok HaKohen of Lublin, the great scholar of the 18th century, he explains that the desire for money is greater than any other material drive because it's insatiable. There's a limit to how much a person can eat. There's a limit to how much a person can commit adultery. But there's no limit as to how much money one can accumulate. So the quest for wealth can become more obsessive than any other quest. And children can be the price. So whether we're parents, grandparents, whatever our stage in life, we have to use our influence on those who look to us to make sure they don't commit themselves more to their work than their families. We have to work to live and not live to work. Today it's very difficult to find a good and healthy balance. Gone are the days when one switched off at 5:30 and went home and had the evening to oneself. We're constantly bombarded with emails and texts and WhatsApps that come to our phones. It's not easy to switch off and have one's priorities in order. I remember in the early days of COVID, when we had that first very strict lockdown, people were so relieved that they could just slow down and take a breath. But of course, as we're now virtually back to normal, it's harder to stop and breathe. But that's what we have to do. That's the message we can take from this story of the sons of Gad and Reuven, that we have to have our priorities in order. Our family, religion, coming to shul, doing the right things. And of course, the money we make will never go with us. I wish you all a calm and restful and peaceful Shabbat. We're now going to move to the Kabbalat Shabbat service, which is starts with Yedid Nefesh on page 256 in the Siddur, in the green Rabbi Sack Siddur. I'm going to sing perhaps a different tune to the one you're familiar with. The traditional one is composed by Naomi Shemer, but this one's composed, I think, by Yossi Green and sung by Avram Fried. Very beautiful and something perhaps a bit different in honor of Rosh Chodesh. Yedid Nefesh, Yedid Nefesh, Avarachaman, Meshoech Avdecha, Eretzonecho. Yedid Nefesh, Yedid Nefesh, Avarachaman, Meshoech Avdecha, Eretzonecho. Ay, 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 Yaretz Avdecha, Yaretz Avdecha, Kama Yayol Yishtachave, El Mul Hadorecha, Yerav Eloi, Yerav Eloi, Yegdoisecha, Minoi Fesuf, Lechobovo Etovovam, Adonai, Adonai, Adore Noe, Ziva Elon. Naftiech Elas Ahavosecha. Ay, 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 Ana Elena. Ana Elena Refana la Beharesna. No, I am Zivecha. As is chazek, v'sis rapei, v'yisalo, simchas elon. Vosig yemna, rachamecha, v'chesana al benahuvecha. Izekamo, nichsoi, v'nichsavti, Levi's Mehera, Besiferes Zecha. Ay, 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 Eilecham Medah, Eilecham da libi v'chuvosana, V'yaleti salam, Eilecham Medah, Eilecham da libi v'chusana, V'yaleti salam. Yigole na v'roes chavivi olai, Yesek Hashem emecho. Yigole na v'roes chavivi olai, Yesek Hashem emecho. Ay, 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 Ta'eretz, Ta'eretz, Mikvayedecha, Na'ogiyelo, V'nismecha v'ach, Ma'erev, Ma'erev, Kivar Ma'yed, V'choneyenu, Kiyimei Availom. Excuse me. As we now get into the Kabbalat Shabbat service. Lechon eranena ladoenai, Naria letzori sheinu. Arbaim shana akad bedai, ohay malam teilei v'veim, v'heim lo yodeyu drachai. Nashen nishmati v'api, Yemi vayon emenu chasi, Shir Adonai shir chadash. Avel Adonai shir chayes. ישמחו השמיים ושגי הארץ, ירם היום אלוהי, יעלו יסודי וכל אשר בוי, אז ירננו כל עצי יוער, לפני אדוני קיבל ישפוט הארץ, ישפוט תבל בצדק, ועמים במנעשי, אדוני מלך. Yata Adonai Halein Al-Kol Haaretz Ve'adna Leiso Al-Kol Elohim Hayave Adonai Sinara Naveshayt chasidov, Yaveshoim yatzilem, Hazadon atzadik leYisraelim simcha, simchu tzadikim b'Adonai, v'hoyedu lezecher kodeshai, Bizmar shir Adonai shir chadash. B'chatzot tzarayim v'kol shofar harihu difnei hamelech Adonai yiram hayom Elohai teven v'yishvei b'narais nimechal Yachmad harim yithaneinu Lifnei Adonai kivat lishma et haaretz yishbot teven betzedek ve'amim b'meisharim Adonai malach. Ve'amod anan yidaber alehem shomeru edasav v'chaygenu b'salamoi Adonai Eloheinu ata nisam Eloisei ha'yisalahem v'noekeim alali loesam Roimem Adonai Eloheinu v'ishtachavu li'ar kodeshoi Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu Mizmor Ladovim. Adonai, Yechel el hayolim, v'chesoy v'yoray, v'chalavoy, uloi, amelech ovoid, Adonai, lamabel yashov, lamabel yashov, vayeshev Adonai, melech le'olam, Adonai, oiz, le'amo v'yitein, Adonai, yevarech. Yesamai, Esamai, Vashalayim. Ono v'choyach, v'choyach, Gedulas yeminecho, yeminecho, Tatir eserura, Kabedin asamecho, Sahagvenu, Taharenu, Loidah. Heyonna v'kaya Gedulas yeminecha, Tatir eserura, Tatir eserura, Kamarinas, Arinas amecho, Sayvenu, Taharenu, Loidah. We're going to sing the first few stanzas to a traditional tune for the 3 weeks, which are currently in the time of mourning for the temple. It's also a tune used on Tisha B'Av itself for the poem for the Piyut Elei Tzion. Lecha doidi likras kala, Pnei Shabbos nekabela, Lecha doidi likras kala, Pnei Shabbos nekabela, Shomer v'zachor b'dibur echad, Ishmiyanu elam yechad, Adonai echad, Shema echad, Shem Usif Erdes Velisila, Lechot Adi, Likras Gala, Pnei Shabbos Nekabela, Lechot Adi, Likras Gala, Pnei Shabbos Nekabela, Likras Shabbos Lechuvenercha, Ki Mekayra Beracha, Meirash Mikedem Nesucha, Soif Ma'aseh B'machshavot Techila, Lechot Oidi, Nikras Kala, Pnei Shabbos Nekabela, Lechot Oidi, Nikras Kala, Pnei Shabbos Nekabela, Yemi Yigdash Melech Imelchucha, Matot-Masei mitarapecha, Kabbalat Shabbat behemekabacha, Hu yachmal alayichem la, Lechot aidi likras kalta, B'nei Shabbos nekabela, Lechot aidi likras kalta, B'nei Shabbos nekabela. Isnari meyafar kumi, Limshibikdei sivatei chami, Al yad beni yishai beisal lachmi, Karla el nashik yola, Lechot aidi likras kala, B'nei Shabbos nekabela, Lechot aidi likras kala, B'nei Shabbos nekabela, Yisayri, Kiva ayrech miyayri, Ori shedaberi, K'vayt Adonai alayich nigla, Lechot aidi likras kala, B'nei Shabbos nekabela, Lechot aidi likras kala, B'nei Shabbos nekabela. Lo say v'shir v'sika olmi, ma tishtoich achi u'matemi, b'ach yechso ani yami, v'ni v'nesa irantin la, lecha doidi likras kala, B'nei Shabbos nekabela, Lecha doidi likras kala, B'nei Shabbos nekabela, V'hoyim shisa shai soyich, V'rachak kol mevalayich, Yosis alayich, Elohayich, Kivzes chassan al kala, Lecha doidi likras kala, B'nei Shabbos nekabela, Lecha doidi likras kala, B'nei Shabbos nekabela. Yaminus motifreitzi, V'es Adonai ta'aritzi, Al yad ish v'partzi, V'nismecha v'nagila, Lecha doidi likras kala, B'nei Shabbos, B'nei Shabbos, B'nei Shabbos nekabela, V'hayim v'shalom ateres bala, Yegam b'simra v'tzahala, Tza'echem unei am segula, Ba'ichala, Ba'ichala, Lecha doidi likras kala, B'nei Shabbos nekabela, Lecha doidi likras kala, B'nei Shabbos nekabela. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us this evening in Liverpool, in Allerton. I wish you all Shabbat Shalom. It was lovely to see comments from all across the country, and it's amazing that you all tune in to hear an inspirational Kabbalat Shabbat. I wish you all a good Shabbat Shalom, a Chodesh Tov, and look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you very much.